The adventure of the haunted hams. When Nick and Nora go to the country and discover that livestock aren't the only stock in barns during the summer. The Adventures of the Thin Man is brought to you by the Pabst Brewing Company of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Newark, New Jersey, and Peoria, Illinois. And this is Ed Hurley saying good night with the best wishes of Pabst Blue Ribbon dealers from coast to coast. And friends, now that summertime is really here to stay for a while, you'll be planning more and more hot weather meals. You know, an appetizing platter of cold cut, sliced ham, turkey, corned beef, potato salad, and, of course, plenty of Pabst Blue Ribbon, nicely chilled in cans or bottles. Better order a good supply today, just so you'll have it in your refrigerator when you get that thirsty feeling. Be sure it's Pabst Blue Ribbon. Blended, splendid. Pabst Blue Ribbon.
This is NBC, the national broadcasting company.
Don't go away. There's more classics coming your way from Old Time Radio USA and the WOTR Radio Network.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheSkin.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheSkin.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheSkin.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
More from Old Time Radio USA's National Radio Day Top 100 radio shows of all time. Brought to you by the WOTR Radio Network.
Good evening. This is Crime Classics. I am Thomas Hyland with another true story of crime. Listen. That's a chicken. She's a fat one. She's doing practically all the things a chicken can do. And besides all this cleverness, she's about to perform her primary function. She's going to be a dinner. The lady who carries the bird in her left hand is named Abby Durfee Borden, stepmother to Emma and Lizzie Borden. Mrs. Borden weighs over 200 pounds. The curved-handled axe she holds in her right hand is her favorite when she goes out amongst the chickens. Her favorite because with it she does such a neat job, which is more than I can say for the person who murdered Mrs. Borden and her husband, Mr. Borden. So tonight, my report to you on the bloody, bloody banks of Fall River.
Crime Classics, a new series of true crime stories from the records and newspapers of every land, from every time. Your host each week, Mr. Thomas Hyland, connoisseur of crime, student of violence, and teller of murders. Now, once again, Mr. Thomas Hyland.
The place is Fall River, Massachusetts, at the start of a hot August in 1892. In that era, it was a town whose dominant color was brown, the color of sun-dried lawns, of rain-stippled brick and board, of ladies' dresses that reached from neck to pavement. Next in popularity, as far as color went, was black. It was a stern time and a stern place, and bleak, where certain types of smiles were suspect, and where women only dared to stretch in the privacy of kitchen or boudoir. It was a time, too, when 18 was the age of marriage, and a single woman of 32 had to find surcease in this way: breaking saloons' windows, knitting, secretly tearing from the newspaper the latest picture of John L. Sullivan, also Jim Corbett, who was rumored to be more of a gentleman, or this way.
Till death thy endless mercies seal.
Lizzie Borden's way.
And make the sacrifice complete.
Amen. There now. How did you like that hymn?
Oh, very much, Reverend Job.
And then I shall write my brother to send me the rest of the new ones from New York. I trust your judgment, Miss Borden, implicitly.
How is your brother?
Oh, he's getting married.
Married?
Didn't I tell you?
No. No, you didn't.
I'm sorry.
I think, Reverend, you might have let me know in another way. Less blunt.
But you don't even know my brother.
I hope he'll be very happy.
I'm sure you do.
Reverend.
Yes, Miss Lizzie?
And how much longer will you grieve?
Dear Miss Lizzie.
Your wife is gone now for 4 years.
Dear, dear Miss Lizzie. How kind is your concern. Still let me prove thy perfect will. My acts of faith and love repeat. Till death thy endless mercies seal. Amen.
Your father likes chicken, Lizzie. Chicken he shall get. Glad you came out to the backyard. You can do something for me besides picking pears from the tree.
You're just jealous because you can't eat pears, Mrs. Borden, because you break out.
Where you been, Lizzie?
With the Reverend Mr. Jubb. He got some new hymns from New York. Why are you laughing?
Oh, if I was a true mother to you instead of a stepmother, I'd tell you right out, you're never going to get married, Lizzie. New hymns from New York, your work with the Fruit and Flower Mission, none of these are going to help. If I was a true mother to you, I'd tell you all of those things, but tenderly.
Yes, Mrs. Borden.
And it eats inside you, doesn't it, stepdaughter?
Yes, Mrs. Borden.
You and your sister Emma, old maids. They say that about you. Did you know that?
Yes. Yes, Mrs. Borden.
Here. Least you can do is some work. You can pluck a chicken as well as anyone. Yeah, well, I do the other. Get used to being useful. That's a way to live, too. Take it.
All right. Mrs. Borden?
What is it?
Aren't you concerned about yesterday?
What about yesterday?
About the barns being broken into.
Some children, probably.
Why should they break into the barn?
Looking for iron for sinkers so they could fish. Not so delicate, Lizzie. You do it this way. This way.
I told Mr. Jubb about the milk.
What are you talking about?
About the milk.
What about it?
You've been in the sun too long, Mrs. Borden. Burned your memory away. About the milk. It's being poisoned.
Poisoned?
Why else do you think everyone in the family got sick day before yesterday?
You didn't.
I don't drink milk. And the barn's being ransacked. There's someone who wants to do us harm.
Make your fancies, stepdaughter.
Someone who hates my father. Your father said a man at the bank had cursed him. Father said he'd seen the man loitering about.
Oh, now we've come to it, haven't we?
What?
Now we've brought the conversation around.
What?
Your father. Tell you something. He doesn't care for you. He doesn't care for you at all.
He loves me.
Not at all. What's the matter?
Blood. All over my hands. Blood. Ooh.
Chicken blood. It'll wash off. That's the trouble with you, Lizzie. You shudder your way through. What did you do that for? What did you smear that blood on my face for?
To see how you look, Mrs. Borden.
This is not exactly a healthy relationship between two grown people. But let's face it, the possibility of a lady's liking another lady in the Borden household was pretty remote. First of all, after the widowed Mr. Borden married Abby, he told his two daughters to do everything Abby told them. And often, Abby would order Lizzie to do things right in the middle of plucking a pear from the backyard tree. And Lizzie dearly loved the pears from the backyard tree. Also, it was a constant source of wild hilarity for Abby that neither of her stepdaughters had been taken as bride. She'd gotten married, but Lizzie never did, nor Lizzie's sister, Emma. And sometimes Lizzie would go to her father's room, and she'd ask him this.
How can you stand her?
She takes care of my needs. She cherishes me.
She's a hulk.
When seen through the eyes of affection.
Oh, Father.
It's much too late to ask you to love her, Lizzie. But I insist that this kind of conversation concerning my wife shall be the last.
Whatever you say, Father.
Now it's very hot. I think I'll lie down.
I'll take off your shoes.
Never mind.
I want to.
Very well.
Father.
Yes.
Tell me about my mother, my real mother.
Oh, Lizzie,
Please.
It's been so long.
Please.
I've forgotten.
You have not.
Yes. Yes, I have.
No. She was very lovely. She had brown hair. She had brown eyes, and she was slender. You used to tell me... Father,
What?
why did you let her die?
She had a sickness for
You
which...
let her die. You could have saved her, and you let her die.
Lizzie!
And you married that hulk.
I forbid you...
Father, listen to me.
I forbid you to speak of my wife in such a manner.
Let's go away from here, Father.
Away?
Yes, you and I. Give that woman this house, and we'll go away. Father.
You'll go away, not me.
What?
You speak often of quitting this house, of going to live with a friend. Do it.
You can't mean that.
Do it. Good night.
Father, I want you to know I always love you, no matter what you say to me.
I know, and I'm sorry for you. Good night, Lizzie.
It was the night of August 3rd in the year 1892. A stifling night, humid, sleepless, and filled with drone. A million small sounds, continuous and insistent, made up of insects and dry grass and moist night clothes against moist bedding. And in the middle room of the second floor of number 92 2nd Street, Lizzie Borden walked. And walked. And grew warmer. And walked. And Lizzie Borden wept. Her face pressed to the earth, she wept. And in a little while, for some reason or another, she got up and walked over to the pear tree and plucked a pear and ate it and smacked her lips, sweet with juice, at the moon. Lizzie Borden.
You are listening to Crime Classics and your host, Thomas Hyland. This Saturday night, CBS Radio's Gangbusters presents the story of the soda fountain pigeon. Also Saturday nights on most of these same stations, don't miss the exciting adventures of United States Marshal Matt Dillon on Gunsmoke. Gangbusters and Gunsmoke, Saturday nights at the Star's address. Hear both for twice the excitement. And now once again, Thomas Hyland in the second act of Crime Classics and his report to you on the bloody, bloody banks of Fall River.
I'd like to give you a brief rundown on the Borden family. Let's pick the last day all of them were alive, August 4th, 1892. Let's say about 7 o'clock in the morning. Andrew Jackson Borden, yawning. A.J. Borden is the head of the house and worth over $250,000. He's getting up now and getting ready to go to the bank so he can be near some of it.
Lace me up, Andrew.
Abby Durfee Borden, just before lacing up. Abby is 64 years of age and hadn't gone downstairs without a corset since the age of 15. Lizzie Borden, still asleep. Night clothes on the chair where she left them last night, and dreamless. Woman in bed. There are two other people I must mention. There's Bridget Sullivan, the maid, who is making the mutton soup for breakfast, and Emma Borden, sister to Lizzie, who's off on a trip to Fairhaven in behalf of the Fruit and Flower Mission. We know that the Bordens, all of them, had their breakfast. We know that Mr. Borden left the house at 9 o'clock for the bank. And we know that Bridget washed the windows in the attic. And we know that, as Bridget sat on the windowsill, washing in such a way that a good part of her was hanging over 2nd Street, Lizzie Borden was inside holding her feet so Bridget wouldn't fall. And we know, too, that there was conversation.
I don't feel so good.
Why? What's the matter?
My stomach still hurts when I press it. It's from the other day.
When the milk was poisoned?
No, I don't think it was the milk. It was the bananas. I think Mrs. Borden fried them too long. And I always say that bananas fried too long in mutton soup don't go well together. Oh, help me inside, Lizzie. Here, press me. Here. Oh! You see?
Well, then you should lie down, Bridget, and sleep.
Oh, if I could, I would. But I got these windows to do.
You just lie down here in your room and sleep. Oh, you do what I tell you.
If you mean it, there's nothing I'd like better.
I mean it.
I better inform Mrs. Borden where I'll be
No.
on vacation. Oh, I better?
No. Mrs. Borden is going out soon.
Going out? Oh, she did now and napping.
I really do. Here, I'll turn down your bedclothes. In with you. Now you just go to sleep.
Saying that to Bridget.
You go right to sleep.
Saying a thing like that was like putting chloroform under Bridget's nose. She was a snoozer, that one. When she worked, but get her on a feather bed. Good night, all. Off she went. Lizzie tucked her in and watched over her for a few minutes, and then Lizzie went downstairs and into the guest room.
Hello, Mrs. Borden.
What do you want, Lizzie?
I thought you'd gone out.
What made you think that?
I just thought so.
And now what do you want?
What are you doing in this room, Mrs. Borden?
And why shouldn't I be here?
Oh, Bridget could make up the guest room. You don't have
You
to.
know very well Bridget is not allowed to clean any of the rooms on the second floor.
Oh, yes, My father's coming home.
That's strange. The side door's locked. He can't get in. It's never locked this time of day.
Howdy.
Just a minute. Haven't you got a key?
Why is the side door locked?
I don't know. Haven't you got a key?
No. Come down and open the door.
Try the front one.
All right. Wait a minute. It's locked.
I'll send Lizzie down. Go down and open the door for your father.
A vacuum in time. Here is where truth ends and knowledge. On August the 4th, 1892, at number 92 2nd Street in the town of Fall River, Massachusetts, the time between 10 and 11:15 a.m. is lost. Lost, that's the only word for it. Wrenched somehow out of the rest of time and lost. And started again when that happened. When that was spoken.
Did you call me, Miss Lizzie?
Come downstairs, quickly! Someone came into the house and murdered Father!
What? What did you say?
Someone has murdered Father.
Murdered him?
With an axe. No, don't go in there. Go across the street and get Dr. Brown. Quickly! Someone has hit Father with an axe and killed him. Come in through the front door. It's open. Lizzie, where is your father? In the sitting room, on the sofa. Come. You see?
Oh, you'd better call for Mr. Harrington of the police.
Yes? Who's that?
It's me. It's Bridget. Dr. Bowen will be over. May I say something?
Of course.
Mr. Harrington of the police should know about this.
Perhaps Mrs. Borden should know of this first.
She's not here. She's out on a sick call.
Where is everybody?
Oh, in here, Dr. Bowen, the sitting room.
Your father is quite dead, my dear.
Yes.
I suggest you so inform the police. Inform Mr. Harrington.
I'll see to it.
You're very kind.
This next will be pretty hard to take, but you just have to believe it. I've got the records right here to prove it. Not only was Mr. Harrington not to be found, but there was hardly any cop at all in Fall River. At this very moment, most of them were taking part in the annual excursion of the Fall River Police Association at a shore resort at Rocky Point, which is near Providence, Rhode Island. So, even as Mrs. Churchill was yelling her lungs out for a policeman, they were running sack races, splitting up into quartets for singing purposes, and the more athletic were getting their mustaches wet in the Atlantic Ocean. However, a Marshal Hilliard, who had gotten up too late to meet the trolley which met the excursion train, was sulking around town, and he's the one Mrs. Churchill spotted. She brought him back to number 92 2nd Street. Here, the marshal viewed the body, gave condolences to Lizzie, and set about looking for clues. During his search, Mrs. Churchill made a remarkable discovery.
Lizzie? Yes, Mrs. Churchill?
I've just been up on the second floor.
Yes.
Your mother's up there.
She's not my mother. She's my stepmother.
She's dead.
She's my stepmother.
It looks like somebody took an axe and, well, she's dead.
It was quite a troop who went upstairs to look in on Mrs. Abby Borden. There was Lizzie and Bridget and Marshall Hilliard. Then there was Mrs. Russell and Mrs. Bowen and several other ladies who happened in off the street. Then there was Dr. Bowen, and in a little while the Reverend Mr. Jubb happened in. The latter was the kindest of all to Lizzie. Finally, toward dusk, Mr. Harrington did appear, sun-tanned and sandy and with both his striped bathing suits folded neatly in a strong brown paper. He took charge, and he asked Lizzie where her sister was.
In Fairhaven, doing work for the Fruit and Flower Mission.
Had her sister been there at the time her mother was murdered?
She's not my mother. She's my stepmother.
Very well, but where were you, Lizzie Borden?
In the barn, getting a piece of iron.
For what?
Sinkers for my fishing.
The whole morning?
And in the garden.
How did you happen to find your father dead?
I was bringing him a pear.
And the doctor?
I would say your father was killed an hour and a half after your mother.
What about that, Lizzie Borden?
She's not my mother. She's my stepmother.
Who do you think killed them then?
The same man who poisoned the milk. The same man who broke into the barn. The same man who my father saw loitering.
Don't you think it strange that Bridget was asleep and your sister out of town and you out in the garden, all of you out of the way for 1 hour and a half while your parents are murdered?
Mrs. Borden cannot rightly be called a parent of mine.
And these were the questions asked, and these the answers. Harrington asked them, the coroner asked them, the prosecuting attorney asked them. Yes, indeed, Lizzie was tried for murder, so there was a prosecuting attorney, and he asked them. These questions and a lot more. The trial lasted 13 days, and Lizzie Borden was adjudged not guilty. So, if Lizzie Borden was declared not guilty, we must assume this is the way our unknown murderer operated. Hot day on a busy street in Fall River. Murderer walking down it, carrying axe. Mrs. Borden disposed of. Wait 1 hour and a half. Then... Mr. Borden. Then... And there he goes. Murderer, covered with blood, carrying a bloody axe. And no one noticed him. Or they'd go yelling for Mr. Harrington. No one did. So the murderer was never found. And Lizzie? She never married. She embraced other things.
Till death thy endless mercies seal. And make the sacrifice complete.
Amen.
In just a moment, Thomas Hyland will tell you about our next crime classic. Fall River, tonight's crime classic, was adapted from the original court reports and newspaper accounts by Morton Fine and David Friedkin. The music was composed and conducted by Bernard Herrmann, and the program is produced and directed by Elliott Lewis. Thomas Hyland is portrayed on radio by Lou Merrill. In tonight's story, Irene Tedrow was heard as Lizzie Borden. Featured in the cast were Jeanette Nolan, Betty Harford, Sarah Selby, Herb Butterfield, William Johnstone, and Paul Frees. Bob Lamont speaking. Here again is Thomas Hyland.
Next week, Rudgley, England, in the year 1855, and a brilliant young medical man whose hobby was dead people and live racehorses. My report to you will be on The Hangman and William Palmer. Who won? Thank you. Good night.
Tomorrow night, Van Johnson stars in the Thursday theater production of The Old Man's Bride. It's a modern John Alden romance with loads of surprises, as the man, sent to fetch a bride for another, learns plenty from a latter-day Priscilla with a strong mind of her own. It's the Thursday theater presented by CBS Radio tomorrow night on most of these same stations. Thursday nights, Marlena Dietrich stars in Time for Love on the CBS Radio Network.
Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invites you to listen to Dr. Watson tell us another exciting adventure he shared with his old friend, that master detective, Sherlock Holmes. And if you will, I hope you'll listen to me for a second, because I want to tell you about a wine that can make waiting for dinner a pleasure. The wine is Petri California Sherry. Any evening, well, let's say tomorrow evening, right before dinner, pour yourself a glass of Petri Sherry. Just look at it. It's clear as crystal and a wonderful deep amber color. One sure sign of a good sherry. And if you need further proof of just how good Petri Sherry really is, taste it. What wine? That Petri Sherry has a flavor that you know comes right from the heart of the grape. And if you like your sherry dry rather than sweet, you'll really like Petri Pale Dry Sherry. There's no doubt about it. Petri Sherry is one of the most delicious before-dinner wines in this swell country of ours. Oh, and say, when you serve Petri Sherry, serve it proudly, because those letters P-E-T-R-I on the bottle spell the proudest name in the history of American wines. And now I'm sure our good friend Dr. Watson's waiting for us. Let's go enjoy.
There you are, Mr. Bartell.
Good evening, Doctor. All alone tonight, huh?
Yes, my boy, if you can call a man alone when he's got his pipe, his books, and a glass of good port at his elbow. Take your coat off and follow and join me.
Thanks, Doctor.
Help yourself to the port. There's some rather special tobacco in the jar over there.
Fine. And now, Doctor, are you ready to tell us tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure?
I am, Mr. Bartell, and I think you'll find it a most unusual story. It began on a winter's night in 1896. Holmes and I had gone to a theatre in the East End of London to see a performance of a famous old English melodrama called Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street.
It's a good bloodthirsty title, Doctor. The Demon Barber. He sounds as though he specialized in close shaves.
Good gracious me, Mr. Bartell, that's almost unforgivable. He was a murderer of voracious appetite who placed his victims in a specially constructed barber's chair, cut their throats, and then pressed a lever that would swing the chair over and decamp the unfortunate victim into a horrible cellar beneath his shop.
Glad this is only a stage play you're talking about, Doctor.
As my story begins, we were seated in a private box watching one of the closing scenes. Holmes was leaning forward in his chair, following the action on the stage with an obvious delight, while I sat beside him equally engrossed. An actor by the name of Mark Humphreys was playing the part of Sweeney Todd, and no one could deny that he was playing it up to the hilt.
Where are you going, Tobias? To the nearest magistrate, Sweeney Todd, to denounce you as a fiendish, cruel, cold-blooded murderer. You have pronounced your doom. Into the chair with you, and over and down into the depths below. Ha, 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 there. But stay, whence comes this apparition? 'Tis the ghost of another customer of mine. The yawning grave yields up his ghastly inmates to prove me guilt. Blood! We'll have blood! See, he is there. He comes to accuse me of his murder. Oh, save me! 'Twas not I that slew you. Let me leave, or it will kill me. Let me leave! Ha, ha, ha,
Well, upon my soul, Holmes, that fellow Mark Humphreys is the most florid actor that I've ever seen on a stage.
I find him enchanting, Watson. It seems to me he's really caught the flavor of this murderous monster piece. After all, a restrained performance of the Barber Sweeney Todd would be unthinkable.
Yes, I suppose it would. But I must say his makeup seems rather overdone. No barber would wear such an enormous beard. It'd be most impractical. Probably get in the customers' faces. By the way, I noticed from the program that Mark Humphreys, as well as being the principal actor, is also the owner of the company.
Yes, the current trend towards the actor-manager is a very healthy sign, I think. Come in.
Excuse me, but is one of you gentlemen Mr. Sherlock Holmes?
Yes, I am.
Oh, I was asked to give you this note.
Thank you.
Who on earth knows that you're at the theatre, Holmes?
We'll soon find out. Ah, this note is from Mark Humphreys, our actor-manager.
What's it say?
Dear Mr. Holmes, I recognize you in your box. Please come to my dressing room after the performance. My sanity, and even the safety of London, perhaps, depends on your compliance.
Good Lord, my sanity and the safety of London. I wonder what on earth he means.
That, my dear fellow, we can only discover by going backstage to meet him. As it is, the curtain's going up in the last scene I see. For a little longer, we must possess our souls in patience.
Mr. Sherlock Holmes?
Yes, sir?
Oh, my name is Lindsay, Derek Lindsay. I'm the business manager. Mr. Humphreys asked me to meet you at the stage door and take you to his dressing room.
Thank you very much. This is my colleague, Dr. Watson.
How do you do?
Oh, how are you, Doctor? Will you follow me, please?
Excuse me asking, Mr. Lindsay, but surely you must be related to that distinguished actor of some years back, Lytton Lindsay.
He was my father, Mr. Holmes.
Ah, indeed. The resemblance is extraordinary.
With such a heritage, Mr. Lindsay, you must love the theatre.
It'll probably sound like heresy, but I hate it. However, it's the only thing I was trained for, and there's good money to be made in it, sometimes, and money's a thing I both like and want. Oh, Mr. Holmes, I do hope you'll be able to help Mark Humphreys. He certainly needs it.
Oh, really? What seems to be his trouble?
Oh, he'll have to tell you that for himself. But his wife and I think... There's Mrs. Humphreys now. Maria!
Yes, Derek.
Maria, this is Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. Mrs. Mark Humphreys.
How do you do?
Oh, Mr. Holmes, I'm so grateful that you're going to see Mark. He's in such a dreadful state. There have been times lately when Mr. Lindsay and I have been afraid he's going out of his mind, haven't we, Derek?
Indeed we have. We're both dreadfully worried about him.
In that case, I hope I can be of service. Which is his dressing room?
Number 1, next door to mine. Derek, I think it'll be better if Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson go in alone. I'm sure Mark will speak more freely if we're not in the room.
I think perhaps that is a good idea, Mrs. Humphreys. We'll see you later on. Come along, fellow.
At your arm.
Come in, come in. Sherlock Holmes, thank heaven you're here. Close the door.
Mr. Humphreys, this is Dr. Watson.
Watson, eh? Yes, I know of you, too.
How do you do, sir?
Sit down, won't you, gentlemen? You're wondering why I asked you to come back and see me, of course.
Naturally, sir.
Well, I won't beat about the bush and waste your time. I'll come straight to the point. I'm going mad.
Oh, come now, sir.
I know. It sounds
come.
fantastic, but it's true. I've often heard of actors beginning to live their parts off the stage that they play on it. Well, it's happening to me. I'm turning into another Sweeney Todd. the character I'm portraying on the
Are
stage.
you suggesting, sir, that you're a potential murderer?
Yes, I am.
What reason do you have for holding that belief?
Reason? Listen to this. 3 times in the past week, I've wakened in the morning to find my boots covered with mud and my razor stained with blood.
Great Scott.
You've had no recollection of any untoward events during the night?
None.
Have you ever been addicted to the unfortunate habit of sleepwalking, sir?
Not to my knowledge, Doctor. And if I had been, surely my wife would have told me about
Your
it.
wife? Where do you live, Mr. Humphreys?
We have a flat here above the theatre.
Above the theatre, eh? Mr. Humphreys, you say that on 3 separate occasions on wakening in the morning, you have found a blood-stained razor and mud-covered boots. Can you show us this proof?
No, I can't. I was always so frightened that my wife would see that I cleaned them before she had the opportunity of finding them.
That's a great pity, sir. They would have been very valuable clues in a case like this.
I couldn't risk my wife seeing evidence like that. Doctor, she'd know the truth. That at night times, while she's asleep, some devilish, unconscious urge has overcome me. An urge that causes me to prowl the streets of London, razor in hand, looking for a victim. Mr. Holmes, you've got to help me. I'm certain that without knowing it, I've been committing murder, and if you don't help me, I'll go on and on.
Shh, Mr. Humphreys, please. I'll undertake the case. It's a very unique assignment. In effect, I'm being engaged by a possible murderer to prove him guilty.
Well, Mr. Holmes, I've been through all the records we have here at Scotland Yard.
What have you found, Inspector Gregson?
In the last 2 months, we haven't had one case of an unsolved killing with a razor.
Any mysterious disappearances, Inspector?
Bless your heart, Doctor. There's never a day that passes without 1 or 2 of them. Here's a list of them, Mr. Holmes, if it's any use to you.
Thanks. Come on, Watson. In the morning, we can go back to the theatre and set our friend's mind at rest. I'm much obliged to you, Gregson.
Glad to be of service, Mr. Holmes.
We examined the homicide records at Scotland Yard after leaving you last night, Mr. Humphreys. There have been no unsolved razor murders in London during the past fortnight.
And therefore, I think you may rest easy on that score, sir.
But it proves nothing. Remember that in the play, Sweeney Todd's victims are never found either.
Yes, thanks to his singularly horrible ingenuity in disposing of them. But this is real life, Mr. Humphreys.
Then how do you account for the bloodied razors and the muddied boots?
Well, now, are you sure that they aren't just in your imagination, sir? You admit that your wife's never seen them? The whole thing could be, or shall we say, an overdose of Sweeney Todd?
Well, I admit that I'm suffering from a surfeit of that.
And why not drop the play from your repertoire?
Our manager, Derek Lindsay, won't let me. It's our best moneymaker, and he's always got a keen eye to business. Mr. Holmes, I can see that you still don't believe my story. So I've saved some evidence for you, evidence that I found this morning. Look at these. Now what do you say? Do you still think it's my imagination?
Great Scotter, blood-stained razor and boots covered with mud.
Splendid. At last, some real clues to work on.
How can you be so calm, Holmes? It happened again last night. Do you realize that I'm a murderer? I'm a menace to society? For heaven's sake, lock me up before I do some more damage.
No, sir. Don't get so excited.
Mr. Humphreys, I should like to take these objects back to Baker Street where I can perform some chemical tests. You have no objections, I hope?
Objections? Good heavens, no.
Excellent. You've told no one of this fresh discovery of yours?
No one. Not even Derek Lindsay.
Derek Lindsay, that's your manager, isn't it?
Yes. The best friend I ever had. Except for his father before him. It was Derek who helped me back on my feet 2 years ago, when I put on that disastrous production of Macbeth. Don't know where I'd be today if it weren't for him.
You lost a great deal of money on that production, sir.
Nearly every penny I had.
Indeed. By the way, where is your wife, Mr. Humphreys?
She's in her dressing room next door. We have a matinee today, you know.
I'd like a word with her. Watson, old chap. Wait here for me, will you? I won't be a moment.
Right you are, Holmes.
Who is it?
Sherlock Holmes.
You want to talk to me, Mr. Holmes?
For a moment. May I come in, Mrs. Humphreys?
Well, couldn't we talk on the stage? It's empty.
I should prefer to come into your dressing room, if you don't mind. What I have to say is confidential.
Very well, then. Come in. Mr. Holmes, may I introduce Signor Vanelli, our musical director?
How do you do, sir?
It is a great honor to meet the so great Signor Holmes. I have so admired you. Oh, often I have envied you. Many times I say to myself, Giuseppe,
Signor Vanelli, if you don't mind, I wish to speak to Mrs. Humphreys alone.
Oh, I quite understand. Excuse me, Senor. Adios, Ana Maria.
Mr. Holmes, I'm really awfully glad of this opportunity to talk to you. Tell me truthfully, please, what's your opinion of my husband?
I haven't formed a definite opinion yet, except that it's possible that he's the victim of a fraud. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Of course not, Mr. Holmes.
Has your husband ever shown evidence of being a sleepwalker?
A sleepwalker? Oh, no, never.
I see. Are you a light sleeper?
Yes, I am. Exceptionally so. Why?
Oh, I was just curious.
You're being very mysterious, Mr. Holmes. Can't you tell even me what's going on?
I promised your husband the answer to that question before tonight's performance. I'm afraid I can't tell you any more until then.
Oh. And now may I ask a question?
Oh, certainly, though I won't promise to answer it.
You said just now that my husband might be the victim of a fraud. What did you mean?
Again, I'm afraid that you must wait for the specific answer to that question. However, there's another fraud being practiced on him that I can speak of now.
What fraud?
The fraud that you are indulging in, Mrs. Humphreys.
What do you mean?
Of course, this particular fraud is none of my business, but when I almost force my way into your dressing room and find your musical director, the quantity of rice powder on one shoulder and suggestions of rouge on his cheek, it doesn't take a great deal of intelligence to deduce that your husband is being deceived.
Oh, how dare you! Get out of here at once!
That's exactly what I propose doing. Good day to you, madam. No doubt I shall see you later on.
Well, Holmes, what does the microscope tell you about the mud on the boots and the blood stains on the razor?
Dropped on a blank on the mud, old chap. It's an extremely common type to be found in most parts of London.
And the blood?
I'm examining that now.
This is as strange a case as ever I remember, Holmes. Here you are trying to prove a man innocent when he insists that he's guilty.
By George, Watson! Here's the answer.
What?
This blood is definitely not human blood. It's probably canine. Now, a Sweeney Todd madness would hardly drive its victim to kill dogs. Therefore, it's obvious that Mark Humphreys is the victim of a devilish plot.
And he's not a murderer.
No, come on, old fellow. We must go to the theater at once and give him the good news.
Why doesn't he answer? 3/4 of an hour before the curtain time.
He must be in his dressing room. I'll knock again. Come on, Watson, let's go in.
Holmes, look. Look, he's slumped over his dressing table.
I hope we're not too late. Here, give me a hand with him.
We are too late. His throat's been cut.
Poor devil. I promised him a solution to his troubles before the night was over. Little did I think that the solution would be death.
We'll hear the rest of Dr. Watson's story in just a second, so I'm going to ask you if you're one of those people who just eats to live, or whether you really enjoy good food. If you love good eating, you've just got to know about Petri wine. Petri wine makes good food taste wonderful. For instance, if you're having steak or a roast or any meat or meat dish, you'll love it served with Petri California Burgundy. Petri Burgundy is the last word in delicious red wines. Now, with chicken or fish, you can't beat the delicate Petri California Sauterne, a really extraordinary white wine. Just to make sure you don't miss either Petri wine, don't buy one, buy two. Buy both Petri Burgundy and Petri Sauterne. They're both swell because they're both Petri. Well, Dr. Watson, what happened next?
Till I think I'll pick up the story exactly where I left off. Holmes and I were standing in Mark Humphrey's dressing room, looking with horror at the slashed throat of the actor-manager. There was a bitter, self-accusing note in Holmes's voice as he said,
I promised him a solution to his troubles before tonight was over. Little did I think that solution would be
looks to me
death.
as if worry over his supposed madness has caused him to commit suicide.
Suicide? Rubbish, old fellow. It's murder.
But look at the razor clutched in his hand.
Undoubtedly placed there by the murderer before rigor mortis had a chance to set in. In any case, scrutinize the wound. Does that look as if it had been done by the hand of a suicide?
Well, I don't see why not.
Look closer, old chap. The depth of the wound is even, whereas a suicide's cut always wavers towards the end. No, this is murder, Watson, and I think I know who did it. But I have little evidence. I must lay a trap.
What kind of a trap, Holmes?
I haven't time to tell you now, old fellow. Every moment counts. Off with you to Scotland Yard and get Inspector Gregson. Bring him back here as fast as you can.
All right, you are.
And Watson.
Yes?
Tell absolutely no one except Gregson of Mark Humphrey's death. And say that he's still alive and well and that his problems are solved.
It's the performance of the play.
Don't you worry about that, old chap. Off with you to Scotland Yard.
I'm sorry it took so long to find me, Dr. Watson. I was out on another case, you see.
No, that's all right, Inspector. But the performance, if there is one, must be nearly over by now.
Here's the stage door, sir.
Yes, here we are.
Here, you can't go on the stage.
Who says I can't? I'm Inspector Gregson of Scotland Yard.
Oh, sorry, Inspector.
The performance is going on. I wonder who the devil's playing Sweeney Todd. Come along. Let's stand here in the wings.
Quietly. It was only the wind whistling through this cellar.
But this isn't possible. There's Mark Humphreys on the stage. I saw him with his throat cut.
I don't believe in ghosts, Doctor.
Great heavens, it's Holmes.
Like that. Who's this? Ah, it's you, Mrs. Lovett. Somebody seems to have cut your throat. What a pity. No more veal pies. Tell Sweeney Todd who got your throat, dearie, and he'll cut their throats, too. He'll revenge you while you burn down there in hell, dearie. He'll revenge you.
Here he comes now, Gregson.
Amazing disguise. I'd never have recognized him.
Thank heavens that you're both here.
Holmes, and what are you up to?
Surely that's apparent. I disguised myself as the dead man, hoping to force the murderer's hand.
You're running a terrible risk, Mr. Holmes.
Out of my profession, Gregson. Shh. Here comes Signor Vanelli, the musical director.
My dear fellow, I had to leave the orchestra pit to come and congratulate you. Never have you given a finer performance. Bravissimo, bravissimo.
Thank you.
But it is true. You hardly seem the same person. Your performance, she is incomparable. Keep it up, Mark. Keep it up.
I think he spotted you, Holmes.
Yes, and I didn't like his look as he said that.
Well, whoever it is, they've got to show their hand soon. The curtain's going up in the last scene. Keep your eyes open and suspect everyone. Look, my lord, judge. He's by your side. Do not whisper to him. Your ermine robe is stained with blood.
Sweeney Todd, what dark deeds presses on your conscience?
'Twas a dark, foul deed, but heed not what you hear, Lord Judge, nor what you see. Still the figure sits there. I feared it to come to this. 'Tis useless to deny my guilt. The very dead rise from their settlements to prove Sweeney Todd a murderer.
By George, what an actor he'd have made, Doctor.
Yes, what an actor he is, Gregson. I'll be hanged if I know how he remembers the lines, though, even if he has seen the play half a dozen times. Here he comes now. Bravo, Holmes. You did splendidly.
But it didn't work, Watson. It didn't work, confound it. The murderer still hasn't tipped his hand. Have I underestimated him?
Looks as if you have, sir. And if you don't mind my saying so, I think you'd have been a lot wiser to let me handle the case as soon as you found his body, instead of going in for all this dressing up stuff.
Oh, but of course. Now I see it. Only one person could have killed Mark Humphreys.
Who, Holmes?
Do as I say, and I'll show you. I'm going to Humphreys' dressing room now, alone. Give me a few moments' start, and then follow me. Out of sight, but within earshot.
Dr. Watson, why does Mr. Holmes always have to be so blooming mysterious? Why can't he just say who the murderer is and take us to him?
Well, I've been with Mr. Holmes on a great many cases, Gregson, and yet I can't answer that question. Come along. He's got a big enough start now. Let's follow him.
I'm very fond of Mr. Holmes, you know, Doctor, and yet there are times when I get so angry with him, he shouldn't risk his life like that.
You know, Mr. Holmes, he'll never change.
Well, if he don't, one of these days he's going to wake up and find himself dead.
Shh. We're at the door.
There's someone inside with him.
You devil, Humphreys! How many times do I have to kill you?
Great Scott, it's Derek Lindsay, the business manager. Come along, Gregson.
No, Lindsay! You succeeded in killing Humphreys, but you won't kill me. Grab his arm. Look out for that razor.
Here, you.
Let go of me.
No, you don't.
Ah, very neat, Gregson.
Are you all right, Holmes?
Perfectly, thanks, old chap, though I'm a little tired. Gregson, my dear fellow, will you take over from here? I think I've had enough melodrama for one day. How pleasant, Watson, to be back at Baker Street again. A crackling fire, my dressing gown, and your company combined to make a soothing ending to a somewhat violent day.
Yes, it's been a most unusual case, Holmes. I still don't entirely understand it. The original plot, of course, was to try and drive Mark Humphreys mad by making him think that he was a murderer. That accounted for the boots and the blood-stained razor.
Precisely, my dear fellow. And the killer, having conditioned his victim by this trickery, then murdered him, trying to make it appear a suicide. Now, who had a motive?
3 people, Mrs. Humphreys, her lover, Signor Vanelli, and Derek Lindsay. I must say that I suspected the wife.
Well, so did I for a while, and yet it was illogical. She knew, and we may therefore presume that her lover knew, that I was suspicious of her.
And she must have known that you promised her husband a solution to his troubles before the night was out. It seems highly improbable that she or Signor Vanelli would have faked his suicide at that point.
Quite right, my dear fellow. So I investigated Derek Lindsay's affairs, and I found that what Humphreys had referred to as the kindly act of a friend in helping him back onto his feet was in reality the mortgaging of his entire theatrical effects. Lindsay stood to inherit the theater on Humphrey's death. Therefore, I was convinced that he was the killer.
And then, after he'd murdered him, he saw what he thought to be Mark Humphreys on the stage.
Ah, that's where I was slow and stupid, old chap. I couldn't imagine what motive gave the cold, clear nerve to suppress all reactions when he saw his supposed victim revived on the stage. Only at that moment did I realize.
And what was the motive that made him hold his hand?
The characteristic that ruled his life, Watson. Avarice. A morbid love of money. You see, if he'd attacked me during the performance, he'd have had to refund the money to the audience. His greed conquered all other passions. It made him wait until the performance was finished before he attempted my life.
You know, Holmes, now that the case is solved, I'll tell you something in confidence.
Please do, old fellow. What is it?
At the end of the play tonight, I was afraid that you'd made a mistake, that you'd slipped up on the case. Gregson thought so, too.
And I, Watson, will tell you something in confidence.
Oh, what is it?
There were 3 of us that felt the same way.
Well, now you're being modest, Holmes.
Oh, I assure you I'm not, my dear chap. In fact, in the future, if it should strike you that I'm, well, getting a little overconfident of my powers, or perhaps giving less pains to a case than it deserves, kindly whisper Sweeney Todd in my ear, will you? I shall be infinitely obliged to you.
Doctor, that was a swell story. And a pretty narrow escape for Holmes.
Yeah. He said he almost solved the case too late. Fortunately, it ended well.
Mm-hmm. The thing that sticks in my mind is the fact that this was one of the very rare occasions when Holmes almost made a serious mistake.
We all make mistakes at times, don't we? Bartell, I said we all make mistakes at times.
I suppose so.
You mean to stand there and tell me that you never make a mistake?
Well, not when it comes to choosing a wine, I don't, because I always choose Petri.
Mr. Bartell, you trapped me again.
Could be. But honestly, Doctor, when you choose a Petri wine, you know it's a good wine. Because good wine is the only kind of wine the Petri family makes. And it's easy to understand why when you realize that ever since they started the Petri business way back in the 1800s, the Petri family has handed on down from father to son, the highly developed fine art of winemaking. Yes, the Petri family's been making wine for generations. That's why, no matter what type wine you prefer, for any occasion, you can't go wrong with a Petri wine because Petri took time to bring you good wine. Well, Dr. Watson, do you care to give us a clue about next week's Sherlock Holmes adventure?
Let me see. Next week, Mr. Bartell, next week now. Yes, I'm going to tell you a colorful story that took place in a Parisian circus in 1890. It concerns a very exalted personage, a lady bareback rider, and a strange death that struck without warning.
Oh, boy, I can't miss that one, Doctor.
Good. Well, now, before you go, I want to say something to all our friends. I want you just to think for a minute. Think of how terrible it is to see helpless, little children stricken by infantile paralysis. And then realize that infantile paralysis can be beaten. It can be beaten in very many cases. And your money, your dimes, can do it. Join the March of Dimes. Send your dimes to your local March of Dimes headquarters. Let's help little children walk. Let's help them live.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure was written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and was suggested by an incident in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, The Yellow Face. Music is by Dean Fossler. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studios. This is Harry Bartell saying good night for the Petri family. For a solid hour of exciting mystery dramas, listen every Monday on most of these same stations at 8 o'clock to Michael Shayne, followed immediately by Sherlock Holmes. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back in just a moment.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education
and to finish what I started to get my diploma.
Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
The top 100 radio shows of all time continues here on Old Time Radio USA. Happy National Radio Day to all the old time radio fans listening today.
It isn't Hildegard, kiddies.
The makers of Tenderleaf Tea and Bluebonnet Margarine present The Fred Allen Show. With Fred's guests Frank Sinatra, Portland Hopper, Minerva Pius as Mrs. Nussbaum, the Tenderleaf Workshop Players, the DeMarco Sisters, and Al Goodman and his orchestra. And to the lady who sent me the anonymous fan letter, my name is Kenny Delmar. This week, ladies and gentlemen, our victorious naval forces have been coming home on battleships, cruisers, and carriers. Tonight, another flat top has just arrived, and here he is, Fred Allen.
Thank you, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Kenny, I hope you are celebrating the fleet's return.
Oh, yes, Fred. Well, New York has gone all out to welcome the Navy.
Oh, I know. Last night, they had 80 men rocking the Astor Hotel to make the sailors feel at home who were sleeping there. And in that picture at Music Hall, Weekend at the Waldorf, they took out Walter Pigeon and put in a seagull just for the Navy. Wish some of the Navy had come in to laugh at these jokes,
Well, wasn't Jack Benny in the Navy, Fred?
Jack Benny in the Navy? Oh, that was before water was even invented. They had the H, but they were waiting for the two O's to come out of the Ark in those days. You know that Benny is the only sailor I know who can get seasick looking at a bundle of wet wash? Benny was in the only naval engagement of the Civil War.
Oh, you mean the Monitor and the Merrimack?
Benny was on the Monitor. When the lookout yelled, "Ahoy! The Merrimack's astern," Benny said, "Have them sing something." You think it would have worked better with 4 chicks and a chuck if it... If Benny was a sailor...
Mr. Allen!
Well, Portland, gee whiz. You're just in time, Portland. Kenny and I were discussing the arrival of the Navy.
Oh, everybody's celebrating.
Oh, I know that.
Admiral Halsey was on Bob Hope's program last week.
Yes, Admiral Halsey is braver than I thought.
Do you know why Admiral Halsey came on at the end of Bob's program?
Well, why did Admiral Halsey come on at the end of the Bob Hope program?
He's a rear admiral.
All right, it's your joke. You enjoy it. Tell me, is your mother going to participate in the Navy Day festivities?
Mama's going to be in the parade of ships.
Oh, she's going as Hesperus the Hesperus, is she?
No, Mama's going to wear her new corset.
Her new corset, huh?
Mama's going as Old Ironsides.
Oh. Say, I hope she doesn't carry the impersonation too far.
How?
Well, if your mother thinks she's Old Ironsides, she may try to back into some dry dock and get scraped for barnacle. And speaking of barnacles, I wonder if everything is shipshape down in Allen's Alley.
Have you a question for them tonight?
Oh, you bet. Since gasoline rationing has ended, traffic congestion in the larger cities has become one of the nation's greatest problems. And so our question is, how is the traffic dilemma affecting you?
Shall we go?
As the two Sticks said when they saw the tom-tom, let's beat it. It's so good to be back in Allen's Alley again, Portland. I wonder if the senator is in tonight. Let's see.
Somebody thumped on my door.
Yes, Senator?
I represent the Solid South.
Well, I know that.
I loaned Mason and Dixon the chalk the day they drew the line.
Well,
Speak up, son. Out with it. Speak up. Up, that is.
Well, look...
You'll never get anywhere staying silent.
Well, if you
Don't try to be another Coolidge, son.
Look, Senator, tell me, how are traffic conditions in Washington?
We're investigating. Congressman, coffee is boiling.
Well...
Coffee's boiling. That's a joke, son. Pay attention, son. Be on your toes.
Well, I'm doing
Yeah, you keep missing them, son.
Well, Senator, look, the streets are filled with cars. What is the solution of the nation's traffic problem?
One-way traffic.
One-way traffic.
Yeah, Mondays all traffic moves only to the east.
Yes.
Tuesdays all traffic moves only to the west.
Yes.
Wednesdays east, Thursdays west.
Now, wait a minute, Senator. What about the north and south?
Son, that was settled by the Civil War.
Oh.
Yeah, well, so long, son. So long, that is.
I heard you through the keyhole, Senator. The senator dropped a picture of Jefferson Davis. Oh, well, I'll give it to him next Sunday. Now, let's see what happens here at this next door.
Howdy, Bub.
Well, well, Mr. Moody, you look a little tired tonight.
Yeah, I've been on the go all day.
Busy, huh?
Yeah, I'm working for a tree surgeon.
Tree surgeon?
I go around leaving Kleenex under weeping willows.
Not so messy a field that way, is it? Well, tell me, Mr. Moody, how do you account for this traffic problem? So many automobiles.
It's progress, Bub.
Progress?
Yeah. Hoover said he'd put a car in every garage.
Yes?
Truman's got 2 cars parked in front of every house.
What do you think is causing the parking trouble, Mr. Moody?
Oh, it's the housing shortage.
The housing shortage, huh?
Yeah. Folks is living in garages and putting their cars out on the street.
Well, how are we going to cope with this traffic problem, Mr. Moody?
I'm a pedestrian.
And your solution is?
Every motorist should drop dead. So long, Bob.
Well, I think Mr. Moody ought to get in touch with the mayor or Campbell's or something. Now, let's try this next door.
No?
Ah, Mrs. Nussbaum.
You are expecting maybe Commissar Mazeltov?
Tell me, Mrs. N., are you concerned with the traffic problem?
Indubitably. If you'll pardon the expression.
Oh, naturally. Well, how are you concerned?
Well, every Friday I'm inviting all my relatives for a big fish dinner.
I see.
I'm calling downtown the Fulton Fish Market.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Fulton is driving uptown with 20 sturgeon.
Oh, the whole dinner is nothing but sturgeon, huh?
Well, the sturgeon I'm cooking all different kinds style.
Oh, good.
Sturgeon a la king.
Yeah.
Sturgeon cacciatore.
Oh,
also sturgeon fouillon.
Oriental.
Sturgeon burgers.
Sturgeon burgers. Do you have, with the dinner, you have dessert?
For dessert, I'm serving sturgeon a la mode.
Sturgeon went upstream in the sentence there. Sturgeon, you're serving sturgeon a la mode?
This is a baked sturgeon. On top is a cold sturgeon.
A la mode. Well, with this traffic congestion, Mr. Fulton can't drive up to the Bronx, can he?
It is impossible.
Well, how does he get your fish uptown?
Every Friday, Mr. Fulton downtown is throwing 20 sturgeon in the Hudson River.
Well, how do the 20 sturgeon find their way up to the Bronx?
Mr. Fulton is throwing in a herring and yelling, "Boys, follow him."
Well, that brings us to the last house in the alley.
Hello, we're here to say hello.
Just a minute, boys. Before you get into your theme song, tell me, have you written any new songs for us this week?
Have you heard? I put a blank check in my pajamas at night in case I have to buy that dream.
No.
Have you heard? My Irene's the village queen, but she's always taking Benzatrine.
No.
We also wrote a blues song.
Blues song? What is it called?
I got the walking up Fifth Avenue, crossing 59th Street, stepping over the gutter on my way uptown blues.
Now, look, boys, look. Look, tonight we happen to be mulling over the traffic problem.
We got just the song you want.
Traffic song? How does it go?
Hit it, Sam. If you're a motorist in New York, you can't drive your car a block. In the traffic, you get jammed. And your rear end you get rammed. Don't just sit there at the wheel, looking like a big schlemiel. Take a tip from me, use the BMT, and sell your Oldsmobile.
And now, if you'll step into the Junior Misses department, we'll meet the 5 DeMarco sisters. With Maestro Al Goodman at the baton, the DeMarcos sing the Atchison, Topeka, and the you-know-what.
Do you hear that whistle down the line? Bigger than it's engine number 49. She's the only one that'll sound that way on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe. See the old smoke rising round the bend. I reckon that you know she's gonna meet a friend. Folks around these parts get the time of day on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe. Jimmy better get the rig. Shottle his pastures pretty big. Oh, I live to the Browns Hotel. Lots of them are traveling for quite a spell, all the way from Philadelphia on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe. Hey, hey, better get that rig. Hitch old Darwin to the shade, 'cause they all want to live to the Browns Hotel. They're not the gone, the brightest spell, all the way from Philadelphia. Not the Chattanooga, Georgia, not the B&O, the Pennsylvania Central, no. On the Atchison, Topeka, S-A-N-T-A, Santa Fe. All aboard, all aboard, all aboard.
Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, a brisk report from Kenny Delmar.
There's an easy way to get more pleasure from tea, a more gracious way to enjoy it. That's in Tenderleaf tea balls. Modern, convenient, better in every way. Tenderleaf tea balls are first choice, the favorite of the American housewife. Yes, Mrs. America prefers Tenderleaf tea balls, and her standards are the highest in the world. The cup quality of your tea is of first importance. Its fragrance, flavor, and all-around goodness as you lift the cup to your lips. To provide that, Tenderleaf tea balls are made with famous-for-flavor Tenderleaf brand tea, always supremely delicious. The individual packets of tasteless filter paper add convenience, ease of handling, simplicity, and speed. When you want a cup of quick comfort in a hurry, just pop a Tenderleaf tea ball in your cup, zip in boiling water, and there's superb tea, quick comfort when you need it most. So for every good reason, ask your grocer for Tenderleaf brand tea balls.
Maestro Al Goodman has just played I Wish from the song I Wish I Knew. Mr. Goodman's band numbers have something in common with his horses. They never finish either. And now, say, Portland, will you put down the red herringbone carpet for our guest?
Who's coming tonight?
Well, we have a great surprise tonight, Portland. Last week, as you possibly read in the papers, a New York policeman made his first appearance as an opera star at the Civic Center. He was a great success. Now, tonight, we have another unknown singing sensation, John Charles Muckenfuss.
Does he work for the city, too?
Oh, yes, for many years. John Charles Muckenfuss is known as the singing street cleaner.
Well, where did you find him?
Well, I was going down to see that new picture, Guest Wife, at the Criterion. Claudette Colbert is in it, and Don Amici is also in the picture, and he doesn't invent anything. And I thought it might be a novelty to go in and see the picture. And as I arrived at the front of the theater, from behind a large can, I heard a beautiful voice. It was John Charles.
Oh, this must be Mr. Muckenfuss now.
Get ready. You take his broom and helmet, Portland.
Okay.
Come in.
Friends, is this the Tenderleaf tea program?
Yes.
Oh, it is? Oh, that's peachy. Then you must be Fred Allen.
Yes, that's true.
Well, if you're Fred Allen, you're just the man I want to see, and, well I don't exactly want to see you either because you're not very pretty to look at.
Now, wait a minute. Just wait a minute. Wait a minute, Bud. Who are you?
Well, I am Ursula Twing. Yes, Ursula Twing. And I am a lawyer.
You're a lawyer?
Yes. Do you want to feel my briefcase?
Well, no. I'll take your word for it.
I am a lawyer, all right. And my last case was Deltz versus the Acme Poultry Market.
The Acme, all right.
It was, yeah. And my client, Mrs. Deltz, was buying a live chicken, and after the chicken had been weighed, it laid an egg.
So what?
Well, the poultry market claimed the egg, and so I sued, and the court ruled caveat emptor, and so the egg was put back in the chicken.
The egg was put back. Well, all right, so the egg is back in the chicken. What has all this got to do with me?
Well, you're in grave trouble, Mr. A. Allen. Yes, not exactly grave either, because I don't think it'll send you that far.
No.
But my client is suing.
Your client?
Yes, Charlie McCarthy. Tonight, you appeared on Edgar Bergen's program.
On the protest,
yes, and
that's
I didn't. And you said...
This makes no sense then, now, does
it? It said... and you said too much, and you said some very nasty things about Charlie, and you've just driven that little boy into a tizzy.
Oh, I have, huh?
Yes, and you're a very bad boy.
Now, look here, Twing. You and Charlie McCarthy don't scare me. I'll fight this thing through to the Supreme Court. And if that doesn't work, I'll go right over Frankfurter's head straight to Mr. District Attorney.
Well, you can, as far as I'm concerned, you can go straight to anywhere you want. But I was here to serve you with a subpoena. And if you had better, you are ordered to appear in court next Sunday, and you had better be there too, Smarty.
If you had anything left over from the other program, put it in here, you know. We can always... You say I'm supposed to appear in court, and what happens if I don't show up?
Well, if you don't show up, you know what happened to Pierre Laval? Boom, boom. Viva la Charlie McCarthy.
Charlie's really going to sue you, Mr.
Well,
Allen.
look at this summons here. It says trial will be held on this program next Sunday. Why, that little wooden runt? I ought to pull his legs off and make lollipop sticks out of them. I ought to go back over there again.
This must be John Charles Muckenfuss, the singing street cleaner.
It probably is. Come in. Well, who are you, son?
I'm Frank Sinatra.
Well, I'm sorry I haven't time to talk now, son. I'm expecting John Charles Muckenfuss, the singing street cleaner.
Well, Mr. Muckenfuss sent me over. See, he can't make it. He got an emergency call.
A street cleaner getting an emergency call?
On 10th Avenue. It was a rush job.
Gad, here we are on the air, and our guest star is over on 10th Avenue performing a broomectomy.
Well, Mr. Allen, Mr. Muckenfuss said maybe I could take his place.
Well, I'm sorry, son. You know, this isn't one of those quiz programs where any schnook can come in off the street and take over the microphone. We only use stars.
Yes, sir.
It's nothing personal, you understand?
Oh, I understand, sir.
We can only use people with talent.
I have talent.
Really?
Yeah.
Who said so?
My mother.
Oh. Well, tell me, would you step just a little closer to the microphone, son, if you will?
I'm sorry. Is this all right?
Just a little farther back, if you will, please.
See, I don't seem to get the hang of it.
No, it's a little difficult. Have you been on the radio before, son?
Well, yes, I've been on once or twice.
Oh, really? What did you say your name was again?
Sinatra.
Sinatra. You're not related to Sam Sinatra.
No.
I used to know a Sam Sinatra up in New Rochelle. He was a glass blower in an optician's up there. If people came in with dirty glasses and couldn't see to get out of the store, Sam would blow on the glasses.
No, I don't know Sam. No, I don't know him. I'm Frank Sinatra.
You're Frank Sinatra. And you say you're in radio?
Yes, I'm on for Old Gold cigarettes.
Oh, are you the guy who squeezes the honey out of the apple on that program?
No, you see, I do the singing.
Frank Sinatra. Say, you weren't formerly with the Yacht Club, boy. I see a little brine on your lapel there.
No, I had sour pickle for lunch.
Oh, did you? You shouldn't eat pickles with those short arms, son. The dill drips on you.
See, I have the same trouble with sodas, you know. I have a short neck, and I can't reach the straws.
Oh, really? Well, how do you drink a soda?
I pour the soda out on the counter and lap it up.
Oh, screw that.
I lost that up.
I have short teeth. Every time I bite a hot dog, all I get is a mouthful of mustard.
You know, once I knew a guy with a short nose. He couldn't smell anything unless he put his face in it.
Oh, really? Well, this is all mighty interesting, Mr.
Sinatra.
Oh, Sinatra. Gosh, it's going to disappoint millions of music lovers. John Charles Muckenfuss, the singing street cleaner, not here. I wonder how long he'll be over there on 10th Avenue.
He said it looked like a long session.
Long session, eh?
The cowboys from Rodeo are parading.
Muckenfuss may be tied up all night.
Uh-huh.
Gad, and right here in the program, we're supposed to have a song.
I can sing a number, Mr. Allen.
Well, all right, son. We're stuck. You've got me over a barrel. What do you want to sing?
How about it might as well be spring?
All right, but don't drag it out, son.
I'll try my best. As restless as a willow in a windstorm. I'm as jumpy as a puppet on a string. I'd say that I had spring fever, but I know it isn't spring. I am starry-eyed and vaguely discontented, like a nightingale without a song to sing. Why should I have spring fever when it isn't even spring? I keep wishing I were somewhere else, walking down a strange new street, hearing words that I have never heard from a girl I've yet to meet. I'm as busy as a spider spinning daydreams. I'm as giddy as a baby on a swing. I haven't seen a crocus or a rosebud or a robin on the wing, but I feel so gay in a melancholy way that it might as well be spring. It might as well be
Frankie, I didn't even recognize you before. Why didn't you tell me? Gosh, how time flies. To think that I started you on your career.
Yeah, I remember when I came to you for advice.
Oh, you wanted to know whether you should take up singing or open a haberdasher's store in Kansas City.
Yeah, and you told me to stick to singing.
Ah, who knows? If you had opened that haberdasher's store in Kansas City, today you might be president.
Oh, I couldn't be president, Fred. No? I can't play the piano.
Oh, that's it. Well, tell me, Frank, that singing you just did, is that the type of thing you're doing on the radio?
Yes. Don't you think my style has possibilities, Fred?
Yes, Frank, but you have to think of the future. You know you're not getting any younger, son. Mm-hmm. New boys are coming along. Perry Como, Dick Hames, Carmen Lombardo, Frank Munn, and the others.
I think I see what you mean, Fred. Where will I be 50 years from now?
That's probably what your insurance company would like to know. But if we're going to stay in radio, Frank, there's only one kind of a program we can do when we're old men.
Fred, you mean?
Hillbilly. Mm-hmm. Frank, hillbilly singers don't ripen until they're 80. I know. I've been in warm studios with them.
But, Fred, Gee whiz, Sinatra hillbilly after all.
Don't worry, Frank. I can fix everything. I know the king of the hillbillies, Zeke Manners. I can see it all, Frankie. 50 years from now, 1995. We're broadcasting from a little 2-watt station in Nutley, New Jersey. You and I are standing there in our bare feet, with our floppy hats. Zeke Manners steps to the microphone and says,
"Howdy, folks. Zeke Manners and his happy hillbillies are on the air. Let her rip." Howdy, friends and neighbors. This is Zeke Manners and the whole gang. The Hoosier Coal Talk, the Coon Creek Choir, Uncle Zeb, Lily Bell, the Hokie Mountain Boys, and those hillbilly twins, Pappy Sinatra and Uncle Hezzy Allen. First, I want you to meet Lily Bell.
Yahoo! Howdy, folks. These shoes is a-killing me.
And here's the Coon Creek Choir. Howdy, y'all. And here they be, them scarecrows fresh from the cornfields, Pappy Sinatra and Uncle Hezzy Allen.
Howdy, Pappy.
Well, howdy, Uncle Hezzy.
Tell me, Pappy, how many hairs onto a pig's face?
Next time we shave, count them. Yes! Uncle, tell me, what has 4 legs and flies?
A dead horse.
No, our table at dinner time. Well, folks, now that we've laughed ourselves sick, Pappy Sinatra and Uncle Hezzy Allen sing, "Open Up Them Pearly Gates."
Listen here, all you sinners. If you want to get to heaven, better get down on your knees and pray.
All you gambling skinners, better quit saying 7-11. Get yourself prepared for Judgment Day. Open up them pearly gates. Open up them pearly gates. Open up them pearly gates for me. Hallelujah, hallelujah. When you hear that trumpet blast, I'll be coming home at last. Open up them pearly gates for me. Open up them gates. Open up them gates. Open up them gates for me. Hallelujah, hallelujah. When you hear that trumpet blast, I'll be coming home at last. Open up them pearly gates for me. And now, Kenny, for just a word or two.
Whatever concerns the family table is important to us all, and here's a good example. Remember the letters FNE for flavor, nutrition, economy. Bluebonnet margarine gives all 3, flavor, nutrition, economy. Think of it, not just 1, not just 2. Bluebonnet margarine gives you all 3. You get flavored, delicious flavor, so fresh, delicate, and country sweet that it makes other foods taste twice as good. Delicious Bluebonnet is a real food approved by nutrition experts. Rich in food energy and in vitamin A, too. Remember, Bluebonnet is the margarine that gives all 3. Flavor, nutrition, economy. Ask for it tomorrow.
Thank you, Kenny. This is Fred Allen saying good night, ladies and gentlemen. Our guest next week will be Edgar Bergen in the biggest court trial
of the National Broadcasting.
Her hat was on the ground by the edge of the river. There were a few bloodstains here and there, that was all. I had a hunch I'd seen the last of June Lawson. Then I heard a faint noise behind me. Somebody was cocking a revolver. And I knew without turning around the gun was pointing at my spine, that any second it was going to go off.
The New Adventures of Michael Shayne, Private Detective. Michael Shayne, reckless, red-headed Irishman, is back again in his old haunts in New Orleans. This is your director, Bill